Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion Podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
A little while ago, we did a live stream podcast where we let people ask us questions. And somebody asked us a question that was something along the lines of what I thought was the most important trait that I had that made this relationship work well. And I said, persistence and consistency. And I want to dive into that a little bit because I've seen the way that my persistence, my consistency of both where it is that I'm leading you and how I'm leading this relationship, and that being the same day in, day out, has given you the space to open, to relax, and to let go. And I know in part that if I was jumping around and if the message I was delivering to you or what I was asking of you as my submissive was changing on a fairly regular basis, that would not be helpful for you at all. Would you agree with that?
Right. No, that wouldn't be supportive.
Why do you think that is?
Probably because I'm the chaos. I'm the one who's changing every day. I need the structure. I need something to lean into that is constant, not ever changing. So if I'm trying to let go of my own structure, my own protections, which is structure, that's the masculine wounding. When we're a feminine being, our protection is the masculine around our hearts, trying to control, trying to create some sense of safety. And wow, more and more of this has started to make sense as I've continued to deepen into who I am. So I want to be the chaos. You don't get to be.
And I love that you went there, because something for the people listening and watching, how far in advance of starting this podcast did I tell you what we were talking about?
Not until we're recording now.
Right. Just before we hit record, basically, I said, this is what we're going to talk about.
Yep.
And you already knew where I was going to go. That's just even that shows the consistency of how I've led you, that you see and feel and understand the truth in how I've been teaching you that what I'm wanting from you, which is authenticity. I want you to be yourself. My dominance in this relationship and my dominance of you is to be structure for you, is to set structure in your life so that you don't have to be always in control.
And you doing that is what has allowed me to feel as free as I do in myself.
The message that we hear so consistently from women who are wanting, craving this kind of a relationship, or who are just kind of getting started in it, is that the way that they have been living is just exhausting them.
Understandably so.
And I know you know well what it's like to be exhausted by the way that you were living.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
So this is the importance of consistency in leadership from the dominant side. You don't need to be under a lot of self-control. You need to be free of self-control if you want to really be able to be free, to let go of control and to be able to follow. This is where the conflict comes in, in most dominant submissive relationships is that the submissive can't let go of the control that she's grasped onto, even though she may want to. And the dominant can't take the lead. I can't enter into a closed space. So the whole thing falls apart if you can't follow and I don't lead. But if where I'm leading you doesn't feel consistent, it's not going to feel safe. And if you don't feel like you know what's going on around you in your life with me and with this relationship, if there's not a solid base to it, what I've observed of you is that you will go right back into trying to take charge in some way, or trying to grab onto something because you're looking for a solid ground.
I would say, yes, absolutely, I have done that, but my whole relationship with uncertainty has changed.
Yeah, and I should say, and give you the credit that's due, this is how it's been as you've been unwinding these patterns. Where we are today, over 6 years into this, you have come so far in, like, it used to be that if I made a single slip up, it would feel like I set us back a month because of how the tiniest little bit of a felt sense of uncertainty would trigger so much fear.
Yeah, and because for a while I wasn't really at a point where I really understood the ego and understanding the bigger spiritual aspect that's going on here. So there was, for me, it seemed like so many patterns, so much protection had to be unwound. And what would happen is I would unwind a little bit here, and then it was almost, I didn't realize that I was grasping harder somewhere else. And so, yeah, like I was just trying to find something, somewhere safe to land when things were shifting in our lives. But I got to a point where I realized this ego thing and how much of life is a facade. And that in order to actually follow you, I just had to be willing to let go of everything. Everything. Having anything my way. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get things I want or experiences I want, but I don't cling to anything. Or at least to my awareness, right?
Well, and that's the difference now, is that now you're willing and able to see where you are when it is made obvious to you. And then you're willing to let go, or if it's hard to let go, or if you're feeling some kind of a triggered clinging reaction, you're willing to look at why that triggered clinging reaction is there, because you've recognized for yourself, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but you've recognized for yourself that it's better to be free from that energy inside of you as long as you can feel safe to let go.
Yeah, and again, when I hear that safe to let go, that is such a distorted thing, I've realized, because the grasping of safety from the ego doesn't have to be there once I've realized that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to look for the evidence that life has always worked out instead of leaning into what could go wrong. And so when I do that, even in the moments where I'm like, oh, I can feel this in my body, I can surrender to it. And I can bring curiosity and inquiry to it and trust that I am going to see and feel what's going to need to be experienced. It's happened every time. And then when I'm able to see it and feel it, I can let it go and feel a new level of freedom, a new level of peace. And I don't grasp for that safety anymore. I like to dance with the unknown. Like there's a world of possibility out there that I feel like I'm learning how to expand into.
I love that quote that uncertainty to the ego feels like fear, but uncertainty to the soul feels like possibility.
Absolutely. Excitement.
Exactly. And that's why we say fear and excitement are on the same spectrum. They're the same. They're two different expressions of the same thing. One of them is just based in its uncertainty in one direction and uncertainty in a different direction. But fear and excitement really are the same thing.
Which isn't separate from scarcity and abundance either.
Exactly. So being able to let go on your part, from what I've witnessed in you, how, let's just say the first 3 years of our Dom sub dynamic versus the second 3 years. The first 3 years, there was a lot of starting and stopping, not stopping, but like we would try something and then try something different and then try something different. We would try to add new things. Like this is a pretty common thing in newer dynamics I see with people I coach all the time is what can we add to it? What can I take control of? And we did a lot of that. Like, what can you give to me, right? What can you let go of?
Well, how much of that was you grasping for something?
It was definitely, I don't know if I'd use the word grasping, but it was trying to figure out how do I behave differently in this role versus how I was, how I acted and behaved before. And
tell me more about that. Behave differently to get me to do what you want or what?
Well, I did not look at myself as a leader in this relationship before I put that collar on you, not in the same way.
Yeah, I can see that.
So when I now am putting myself inside of my own mind, inside of my own body, I'm looking at everything now through a lens of responsibility. And I know that in certain ways I led in our relationship before, but I didn't think of myself as the leader of the relationship.
Yeah, that was definitely not defined.
So now that it was defined, okay, how do I lead? And how do I help you follow at the same time? So that's what I'm talking about when I say, like, how do I behave differently? So you start looking almost, it was like surface level stuff, right? What do you let go of? What do I take control of? And we would look for like these places and these things, like what can you stop doing and I start doing? Or what can I start telling you what to do instead of you deciding for yourself? And that's what a lot of the first 3 years of this was for us. And that led to, in some ways, a lot of inconsistency, which it had to. I don't think that was bad per se or wrong, but it was finding our footing. And then the second 3 years was really marked by a big shift in me seeing you very deeply a few years ago, in a big shift of something that happened in you. And all of a sudden, it really landed for me what the whole point of this dynamic was for me to set that free in you. This really big sense of constraint. Like, I get emotional talking about it because it's so damn meaningful to me. And this is something we keep private to ourselves for now, and what we're talking about here. But for good reason, because it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So the second 3 years has been a big shift in this, where there's been a very consistent sense of what my role is in this relationship and in your life, which is to create and hold a sense of structure for everything that I can in our lives, so that I can set you free to be all of who you are.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how we've kind of danced with what that structure is and what it looks like, and being willing to change it and not fall into, well, like, this is what it is and this is what we need to stick to. Like, the more that I've connected with my own deeper essence, the more truths that I've been able to see, and ways that it was like, okay, I let go of about 5 fingers of control, but 4 were still hanging on and I had no idea. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still hanging on with 4. Shit. All right. And so, a lot of that for me, shocking, showed up in the fitness and nutrition world. But that's just what it was for me,
Mm-hmm.
And I love how my relationship to like all of life and those things, it's not like I don't do exercise anymore, but I've watched my relationship to it and to myself be able to shift, because you've never given up on me.
It's one of the things that we talk about so consistently when we're working with people is have some patience.
A lot.
Because, we work with people all the time who've been married for 10, 20, 30, in some cases 40 or more years. And they've gotten very well rehearsed at relating to each other a certain way. And if you're going to shift all of this around, give it some time, right? It's taken us years of intentional work to be where we are, and no one can just copy what we do or try to get their submissive to be like Dawn, or get your Dom to be like Andrew. Like, that's not what this is. You really have to figure out how to be like yourself, and then be comfortable being yourself and expressing the truth of who you are in the presence of the person you love the most. And that can be the most terrifying thing in the world.
Well, because the truth is, if you haven't done this emotional work, this deep inner healing, and if you don't even know what that is, listen back or join Rapture. I don't know when this podcast will be released, but there's so much inner work to be done that you might be in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 30s, whatever, and you feel like you don't really know who you are. You've just been doing the things to create the life. We've talked a lot about that in our past. You just follow the life that you think that you're supposed to be living, and then like something just isn't feeling right. And maybe you experience that fun power exchange in the bedroom, which is great. But in order to completely live in a surrendered state, for me, it has been so much fucking work, I can't even tell you. But rewarding at the same time, because I have a new experience of life here on the same earth. Like, I look back and I'm like, that really was me. Like, I look at pictures, I think about things I've done in the past, and I'm like, I don't even know how that's possible, but I know it's true, And so a lot of that, I've disconnected my reactions, and they just become a faded memory,
So, again, back to the kind of central point of this is talking about the importance of consistency in all of this has been, especially these last 3 years, the way that I've approached leading you has been looking first and foremost and primarily at where do I see you holding yourself back from from fully expressing the truth of who you are.
You have a gift at that.
I do, and it drives you absolutely crazy sometimes.
Oh, my ego. Absolutely. It did not like to be seen.
So when I consistently do that, which by the way, I can do that consistently. Consistency, congruence is just, it's very easy. To an older version of me, sticking to the same message and following through on something that I set out and really saw the truth in over 3 years ago, to never give up and stay this consistent on something would have felt impossible, because the only way I could conceptualize any form of consistency like that was to absolutely force, grip, grasp. Like, there was no other way for me to conceptualize being the same over an extended period of time. I thought I needed to go with the flow and be more, chaotic. Let's just use the word, right? I wouldn't have called it chaotic. I would have called it like easygoing and go with the flow. But really it is letting life toss me around, because I wasn't connected to any deeper truth. And so in order for me to be this consistent with you, it hasn't come from I created a contract and now I'm every single day forcing you to obey this contract, and we're doing this same ritual every day at 8:13 p.m. whether you like it or not. Like, that's not what we're talking about with consistency here. It's the consistency. It gets easy when it's connected to the truth, or when it's a pursuit of the truth, and when you really believe in what you're doing. And when this became that for us, there's never a single question in my mind when I wake up in the morning whether or not I'm going to try to lead you closer to your authentic self by the end of that day than where you start that day.
The other word that keeps coming up when I hear you speaking about this is just being solid. And for me, what I'm getting at there is what you're alluding to here, of that deeper connection to the truth. I have felt you gain, I don't even know how to speak to this, the connection to consciousness, the connection to source, in your own letting go of your own wounding. And the more you've done that, you haven't talked about all of it with me. I know some of it. Some of the big stuff I know. There's reasons to let each other in to some of this, which is very different than the emotional dumping, right? The emotional processing. But letting me into the experiences that you've been through, like, just does something to deepen the trust inside of me. And it's also what, like, that solidity in you, I feel it. And I haven't always known that I have felt it, but I feel that. And that is everything to my soul.
And that really gets to the second topic that I wanted to kind of loop into this today, which is, we hear people ask all the time, like, how do I get my submissive to let go of control?
Great question.
She's so controlling. They even make an identity out of it, like you had, right? She has so much self-control, so much like discipline. She's very strong-willed, whatever it is.
Some call it alpha female.
Yep. Or not submissive at all.
Right.
So if you find yourself either as a submissive asking, how do I let go of control? Or as a dominant asking yourself, how do I get her to let go of control? Because she's just all up in my business when I'm trying to do something here. You got to look deeper. You have to look deeper than just trying to boss her around. That's the first step to it all.
What comes to mind right there is the inability to sit still. Most of us women who, all women are in this world with some form of masculine wounding because it's just the natural response as a child coming into this world.
Mm-hmm.
It's no surprise. We've talked about it before. So we have some form of protection, and you have to want to let that go. You can't act like you want to. You can't think you want to. You actually have to face it. And so the question that I would ask anyone is, can you sit on the floor or just in a chair, whatever, and do nothing for at least 10 minutes? And the old me, oh my gosh, I don't know how long I would have lasted.
Not long.
I would have wanted a book, something to distract myself. And that right there is the discomfort inside of your nervous system, your whole body, with stillness. And the path to letting go of that discomfort is a path to learning how to be still inside.
You get pretty fired up sometimes when people ask questions about just letting go of control.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, the expectation of any dominant man of a woman to just be able to, okay, whatever you say, is such a short-sighted view of a woman. And, I've seen this become something you've been really passionate about, being able to submit and follow, but also use your voice.
Right, absolutely.
And to some people, submission would mean shutting up.
Yep.
So how do you, for the people listening to this, how do you put into words how those two things work together? Being submissive, but also speaking up and using your voice.
If submission to you is being quiet and just following, you're being a doormat. And you're acting like you don't matter. You're acting like you're not worthy. When inside of all of us is worthiness. We are here, we're all souls here on earth to experience something. And what we get to have the experience of is coming into that worthiness. And, I've experienced some women who can't shut up. Some, they have to have an opinion on everything. Guess what? That's some of your work. I didn't speak up. And so I had to come into learning that, I'm a person. And that maybe sounds funny, but it's true. I was acting like I didn't matter, because that's what I started to believe when I was a young child. And I had you, again, being my biggest cheerleader, to speak up. And so I got to start to see the ways that I continuously acted like I didn't matter, even in our relationship, even to you, the person who I felt the most loved by in my whole life. And so, again, your consistency in showing up for me, in loving me, in being so deeply devoted to me and having the same message of authenticity has allowed me to step into using my voice and feeling confident and like feeling assertive without any sort of negative connotations to them. I actually get to speak up. I get to express myself. And again, like that's very different than speaking up to get what I want. You have to disconnect the two. And again, none of this is aside from the spiritual aspect of all of that too.
Yeah, submission without expression is just doormatting yourself, basically. And the way that I've seen you come into this is you can share anything and everything with me now. And more, you can even do that without being afraid.
Yeah, the times that there's a little bit of fear, I can see it, I can feel it, but I know that I don't need to be afraid. It's just the ego. And so I can just lay that down, or I can tell you, oh my gosh, this feels extremely edgy to share. A little scary, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I can even do that with a smile on my face when one of the things is coming to my mind.
And those are the things that are the most connection building between us. To me, at least, because it feels like you let me into something. And, you know, as we've gone through these last years, some of the things you've brought to me have been edgy for you. Some of them have been edgy for me. Some have been edgy for both of us to really look at and be with. But my commitment to you is that I want to see you flourish. And I'm not going to ever let my discomfort with your authenticity make you suppress yourself. If something that is real for you, and it makes me uncomfortable, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to have to suppress that, or I'm going to have to deal with the discomfort. Mm-hmm. And I've chosen to always take responsibility for the discomfort that is mine. Because I want to see you all the way, like fully expressed. The only way I can do that is to deal with my own discomfort rather than expect you to push it down.
Yeah, because the image that was coming to my mind first was like living in a box. I've said that before because that's what it really feels like. I lived a really sheltered life and my box was super small. As that was coming out of my mouth, I realized how funny that was going to sound. And so the edge of that box, when you are there, that's what feels scary. But it's only because you're living in that size of box in life. But when you can keep pushing the edge.
I'm just going to let you keep talking yourself into euphemisms and making yourself laugh.
When you can keep pushing that edge, it doesn't feel as scary anymore. But guess what? You'll find something new. Yeah. Right? Because...
But then you get to have a much bigger box.
Exactly. You can fit more in. I love me.
Oh, by the way, everyone, this is luteal energy Dawn right now, and the fact that you're laughing about a euphemism sexual joke when you're in your luteal phase is something that wouldn't have happened a few years ago.
Probably not, but I'm not in deep luteal, but anyway.
Keep talking about your box.
All of that changes too. Like when you change your inner state, your relation to all of life every single day changes. So you won't remain the same. You can't. Anyway, it's just like literally imagining like pushing up with your hands and your feet and just making it bigger. growing taller, standing up. And when you're willing to continuously push into expansion, back to what you said earlier, it might feel afraid, but can you lean into the excitement? Because if there's fear, you can find excitement if you are willing to just surrender to it and let life show you what it is. And I believe that we are all here to push those edges, to live an expanded life, to come into who we are and feel the abundance, the infinite possibility in life. And that is so different than my sheltered childhood experience. And you know what? For a while, I would look back and think, why? Why did it have to be that way? Well, guess what? Because that's what I got to arrive here on earth and overcome. And so my whole relationship to my past has changed as I've let go of the judgment, the shame, the pain of what I didn't feel before from the self-abandonment. And all I can say is life is so different.
So if you're a dominant and you find yourself with a submissive who doesn't seem like she can let go of control, I want to come back to what I was talking about a little bit ago here. What are the places in your relationship where you have made her shrink herself because you are uncomfortable with her?
Ooh.
Because what you do when you say, this way that you show up or this way that you talk to me makes me uncomfortable, so please don't talk to me like that. What you've just done is you've told her that she needs to suppress how she's feeling and speak to you in a way that is maybe not authentic to her because you are uncomfortable. You've said, I'm not going to deal with my discomfort. I need you to change yourself. And if that is what submission is in your mind, is that you get to control her so that she doesn't make you uncomfortable, then you're going to end up with a submissive who's always in control because you are putting her in control. If I'm telling you to think about what you say very carefully so that you don't upset me, what is that but telling you control yourself? And how can I ask you to let go of control and also control yourself? I can't. It's not those. They're the exact opposite thing. So then you come to me and you can't let go of control of something. Well, I've trained you to be in control, to be controlling yourself by the way that I've told you. I won't deal with my discomfort. This is the thing that is unchangeable, is what's inside of me. So you change.
Yeah. And I just want to draw attention in case we have extra noise coming through our microphones today. Of course, we're in a campground. And down south, these campgrounds fill up, especially like after Christmas weekend now, and people are on school, kids are on vacation. So we had this back row of the campground to ourselves, like the whole time we were here until this weekend. And it sounds like campers are pulling in all over and setting up. And
if you're brand new to us, Dawn and I are full-time RVers and we live on the road. We travel all the time. We live basically in campgrounds in our camper, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that we're in a camper. So yes, around us right now, before we started, we had about 6 people pulling in to park next to us.
Yeah. So anyway, you were saying some wonderful things, and I just want to share that when you had that realization and you started sharing that with me, that was like this big aha moment for me. And it really allowed more of my emotional baggage, stuffing, some of the certain ones that I didn't think were okay and I didn't even really know were stuffed, they came to the surface. And I started like expressing, and it was uncomfortable for me. And I know that I know that there can be a fear on the dominant side of like, oh my gosh, what is in there? It's never going to stop. Like, holy cow, how do I deal with this? How do I handle this?
Or the way people ask it is, so if she's abusive to you, you just have to sit there and take it?
Right. And like, I get it. Like, I can't speak to every certain situation. But the important thing that we've said over and over is it really disrespectful, or is it just triggering something inside of you? So when I was able to really start to express myself, it changed so much more of my life and the way that we even were able to communicate. And there wasn't a lot that was stuffed, thankfully. But now I don't have judgment around my own emotional experience. And when I can be in true acceptance of that, the rest of our relationship has changed too. And guess what? It's impacted positively our sex life, right? Like, none of my experience is separate from another. And so if I'm stuffing emotions, I'm stuffing something else about me too. And most likely that has to do with my sexuality. And so I'm very passionate about that. And I could speak all day long about it because I know that not every woman has the same experience of being pretty suppressed like I was. But there is some of that in everybody in today's world because sex is just a taboo subject to begin with. And coming into this world and trying to understand sexuality, wow, right? So there's so many different programming pieces that are coming at you when you're a young child that you don't know how to make sense of them or lack of.
The thing that I remember telling you when this hit me was, I've made the decision to see all of your emotions as love.
That was it, yes. It changed so much.
I made that choice. So now when you got angry with me, the fact that you were sharing that anger with me was you loving me. That was the way that I chose to perceive it.
Because I am letting you into my experience.
Yeah, I'm allowing you to have full intimacy with me, to be fully yourself however you are in that moment.
Right, because guess what? Intimacy is not just a sex act.
No, it's real connection. It's being able to be pure presence with each other.
Yeah, and drop the guard.
So if I'm telling you, you can only feel certain things and have me be in acceptance of you, I'm only going to welcome certain feelings, and other ones I'm going to tell you I'm going to shut down, or I'm going to fight back against, or I'm going to defend myself, or whatever. I'm going to give you the energy that I'm not okay with it. Again, I'm telling you, control yourself.
Right.
And then I'm coming around later in the day asking you, well, why can't you let go of control? Well, which one is it? But in order for me to see all of your emotions as love for me when you share them with me, that is what made me then look inside of myself and say, well, why am I so uncomfortable? Why am I so uncomfortable when she's upset with me? Maybe I actually did something that upset her. Or maybe she's just upset and it has nothing to do with me. And here's the answer to that question when guys ask, so I just have to sit there and let her abuse me? No, but you don't know the difference between if she's abusing you or if you are just uncomfortable with her expressing an authentic emotion until you can come to presence and be present with her emotion. And what you will find is that a lot of the big emotion that comes from a woman towards a man comes that way because the walls are up so high around his heart that she's trying to break through.
Yes.
And if you set those walls down, she can have a much more real expression of what she's really feeling, because she doesn't have to try to break through those big hardened walls that he has built around his heart. When I set those down and you started becoming more comfortable with your own emotions because you didn't feel me resisting them, they changed a lot in you. Sometimes they were even bigger than before. And sometimes they would get really big and then just melt away.
Right. But guess what also got bigger? The joy, the happiness, the playfulness, the aliveness. Like all of that gets to be bigger when I'm not carrying the baggage of stuffed emotion, because it affects you. It affects your experience of life. It affects your body. Like as I've continuously let go of things and seen deeper pains from the past, like my whole yoga practice has changed. I feel different in my body. And I was just today when I was doing it, I was thinking about 3 years ago, I think it was, when I was trying to give yoga a try, because I got to a point in the gym where I had some tension in my legs and I had to stop doing some deadlifts, and it was just annoying. And so I was like, okay, I'll do a little bit of yoga. And I like still was living in some control, just changed it. But I was just brought back to what that experience was, because it was coming still from self-hatred, and how different it gets to be today in my body. I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. So then from this place, right? This place of being able to really accept yourself where you are and how you are, in part because you have a space where you can bring all of it and never fear the loss of love. I'm never going to withdraw my love or my heart from you because of your emotional experience. Try bringing consistency to your relationship for 3 years and see what changes. That is what I talk about when I talk to men about opening your hearts. Because that'll take more dominance than anything you will ever try to do in a relationship, to let her feel in your presence. That'll be the most dominant thing you ever do, because when you can do it, you feel like you're 10 feet tall. When you can really just hold her while she's feeling all of what she's feeling, you will feel so damn strong inside of yourself. And that is what is really dominant. And that is also what will allow her to let go of control, because she'll feel so loved, so safe, so secure. She'll feel your consistency. And then from there, the sky is the limit. Not just in the closeness and the love between the two of you, but if you can grant that gift to a woman who has agreed to be your submissive, I'm telling you guys, there's not much she'll ever say no to. That is a woman who will worship the ground you walk on.
Mm-hmm. It will change the whole relationship. Like, my whole experience of you is different. Like, I literally feel like I live with this open heart, open arms, pouring myself at you. Not in a collapse. I want to give you my everything.
So if you want her to let go of control, get some control inside yourself as a man.
Say that again.
If you want her to let go of control, get some control inside of yourself. Get some control over your emotional reactions. Get some control over why it is that you can't let her feel. Because I've said this a couple times already on this episode, I'm going to say it again. If she has to control how she's expressing herself to you, you're putting her in control. not helping her let go of control.
The very opposite of what you're seeking.
Exactly. And, that was a part of what we went through 3 years ago, was this opening that I went through to really let all of you in, which thank goodness that I have, because of how confronting some of the last few years have been. But it's allowed for this openness and intimacy, and it's allowed you to also let go of the resistances that you've held to what I've seen as truth and the places that I'm trying to lead you, which has only been possible by you actually being able to let go and trust. So, where I'll kind of wrap this episode up is something I said a long, long time ago in the early days of our Instagram. I think this was before we even called ourselves Infinite Devotion. Is that if you want her to surrender, she cannot surrender into a void. Surrender to what? Who are you as a man? What is it that she is actually surrendering to? What is she submitting to? Is there anything to you, or do you just fall apart every time she feels something that makes you uncomfortable? How the hell is she going to let go of control when you can't even stand up when your girl is sad or upset? You aren't strong enough for her to submit to yet.
And that is why this is a journey together that requires patience on both sides.
Yeah, because I can't hurry you along to full, complete, total submission when I'm not strong enough to hold that much. I've had to get stronger and stronger and stronger. The submission part on your part has come pretty naturally as I've solidified myself.
Absolutely.
And that's how you do this consistently. Because that is a truth that you can hold to, that can be consistent with every single part of your day, with everything that you do, with everything that you are in every part of your life. You don't need to dom her. You don't need to sub to him and just have things that you're bossed around and told to do. Learn to get this emotional thing, this emotional connection right, and it'll give you all of the fodder and all of the work that you need to really come into this. And you'll find yourself at a level so much deeper than you ever imagined. Even if you want to come all the way back to just pure superficial control and submission, that gets easy with almost no boundaries when you have this level of trust and intimacy with each other.
But even that is not the same thing, right? Like the whole experience of that command and obey, that's what you're getting at here. It's pure. It's not from a place of self-abandonment and wounding at all. Like that is possible.
Yeah, and that's what we live, it's what we teach, it's what we do, and it's who we are. And it really is an honor to be able to lead you in this way and to share this with so many people. And I'm grateful to you and to all of you who watch and listen to us every week. It means so much to us that we can share what we have learned and come into for ourselves. So thank you, Princess, and thank all of you out there.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. I love you so much.